at a video on tomatoes. I was on the local market, and it was the end of the day, and everyone was packing up, and the fruit and veg man was getting rid of tomatoes. Not getting rid of them, but selling them off cheaper than he was selling them at the start of the day. So I bought 2 boxes, and it's also bang on tomato season as well. So these are what I'm going to do with these tomatoes. I'm going to do a few different things, but first of all, I'm going to take some of them. I'm going to blanch them and take the skins off them. So we're going to save the stalks as well, because we're going to do something with those. So as you can see, you just need to nip that little bit of stem out, and it's just a simple case of a sharp knife in, twist round, and then out. That'll go on the compost, even though it's tiny. And then just a quick score on the bottom, and what that'll do is that allow the boiling water will then cook the outside of the skin and allow you to peel them a lot easier. So water up to boiling, and we'll put some tomatoes in. Careful, because it's hot water and you don't want it to splash. So in. I have seen lots of videos on people making tomato sauce in Italy and all around the world, and everyone makes it an entirely different way. This is the way that I'm going to make it, and it just gets rid of the skins, so you don't have to when you're pureeing them down, the apples, you don't have to pure the skins out of the sieve. So water's boiling-ish, doesn't entirely matter, it's not going to take long. As soon as they start to the skins come away from the flesh, then they are ready, and then I've got my favourite green bucket of just cold water. People say you should use ice. Do you know, that's a lot of ice you've got to buy or make. So there we go. The skins start to come away, as you can see there, so that's ready, so that can go straight into the water. So what was that? 30, 40 seconds for those to be ready. Just check them as they come out, and they'll look a little bit wrinkly. So they'll be able to peel those skins off relatively easy. But we need to cool them down first. Cool them down, don't leave them too long in the water, otherwise they start to go a bit soft, and they take on start sucking in some of that water, which you don't want. So I'll do the next lot of batches, and then we'll come back about skinning and prepping them, because you don't want to see me doing all the tomatoes, because there's quite a lot. Right, this is 2 videos in one, and possibly a third. These are the tomatoes that I have quickly blanched in water. You just whip out that little bit there and put a cross on the end. By putting a cross on the end, it just means that the skins can easily split. So you don't have to cook them for longer, you can cook them for less, and the skins will split and come off. With these tomatoes, I am going to make a tomato essence, which is kind of like a tomato stock, which you can also turn into a soup, or use as a basis for things. And then we're going to pulp that's left from that, that's going to be the basis for a tomato sauce, because we don't like waste. So blanch them quickly in the water, and then the skins come away quite easy. As you can see, just a knife, doesn't have to be a sharp one, just to pull away that outside skin. I've seen lots of videos about people making pasta sauce and things like that. I just think you've got to, at some stage, you've got to sieve out or get rid of the skin. And if you're doing it through a sieve, it takes a long time unless you've got a specialised machine to do it. So I just think that taking the time to peel off the skins now just makes things a little bit easier, rather than being there, and you yield better as well, rather than sieving out the skins later on. And I don't want to eat the skin anyway. So skin off into quarters. I don't want to sieve out the seeds as well, so we're going to get rid of the seeds, and we're going to get rid of that little bit of water on the inside. So as you can see, there are seeds and the jelly there, so we're going to scoop that out into a container. So, and then I'm going to puree that down, that water, and then we're going to sieve out the seeds, so we don't have to sieve out the seeds later on. Just saving. It seems like a bit of a faff, but I think in the long term, it's a saving. It saves you time, because I don't want seeds or skin in tomato sauce. So that there, just get your fingers in, as long as your hands are clean. That's what your hands are made for. doing intricate jobs like this, and then you are left with the shell of just pure tomato flesh. There's a few seeds there, but they'll be fine. Not 1 or 2 seeds, I'm not really bothered about. I just don't kind of want that amount of seeds in anything that I'm cooking. So I'll go through, I'll do the rest of my tomatoes, and then we'll get back to the stage where I've got all my tomatoes like that, and I've got the water like that, and then that'll be the next stage, and I'll show you what we do then. So we are now left with the flesh from the tomatoes and the water from the inside of the tomatoes and the seeds. So I want to sieve out the excess amount of seeds, and there's a bit of pulp in there, so I just want to get rid of that. So I'm just left with tomato water. If you're wanting to make a pasta sauce, I'm kind of going around things in a bit of a long way. You could just take these the tomato flesh and start cooking that down to make a pasta sauce, and that will be fine. What I'm going to do is something just a little bit different. I'm going to do a process where I just remove more of the water from that tomato flesh, and then that will make the tomato essence, like tomato stock type of thing, and then I'll be left with the pulp, which I'm then going to make the sauce out of. If you don't want to mess around making the tomato essence, you can just use the tomatoes like that to start cooking things down, and you won't need to sieve out. There's a few seeds in there. I'm not going to lie. There's a few seeds in there, and there's no skin, so you won't need to sieve out excess amounts of skin and seeds. So that way, it kind of stops you from having to stand there for ages with a sieve and a spoon and get rid of lots of things that aren't particularly nice to eat. However, I'm just going to do something a little bit different. So I want the water out of this, but I don't want the seeds, so we're going to puree it with a hand blender just to break down the membrane. Like that. That will have got rid of all, well, it looks like, I'm going to be honest, it looks like snot that holds the tomatoes together, but that will get rid of that, break it down so it'll just quickly pass through the sieve. Oh, right, so something that is quite interesting, tomatoes that you normally buy from the supermarket are rubbish compared to the ones that you can grow yourself. It's not that they are rubbish varieties and that have no taste, it's the way the tomatoes are grown. What you can do is you can take the seeds from supermarket tomatoes and grow them, and the fruit that you grow from those seeds will taste 10 times better than the tomatoes you can buy in the supermarket. It's down to the way that they grow the tomatoes, and they grow them as fast as possible with as much nutrients as possible, so they grow as fast as possible and ripen as fast as possible. If you do them at home, it take a lot longer. That's where you get the flavour from. So, as you can see, lots of the water just passed straight through. You can left with all the seeds. I wouldn't blitz the seeds. I don't think these seeds will grow because they'll be damaged through the blades of the blender. But as you can see now, you've got all that water under there. I'll tip it. No, I won't. I'll put that in there, and as you can see there, you've got all that liquid, which is, I'm going to stick my finger in. It's me. I don't understand why people don't use it in commercial kitchens. It's got a lovely flavour to it, and it will certainly improve the flavour of any kind of flavour like that you're going to add into a tomato sauce. Is going to improve it vastly. So that's that. On to that anyway. So what I'm going to do with the pulp from the tomatoes, I'm going to puree it down and I'm going to freeze it, and then when I defrost it, all the water will come out of the tomato pulp, because you have broken down the molecules that hold everything together. The frost in the freezer breaks everything down, so a lot of the water naturally comes out a lot easier. I've seen a lot of people, what they do is they puree it down at this stage and then they put it in a muslin bag and hang it up in the fridge, and I've never got it to work that way. There's not that much water come out of it. So if you want to make tomato essence, my advice is to puree them down at this stage and then freeze them, defrost them in a bag, in a muslin bag, and you'll find out there's a lot more moisture coming out. You don't actually have to, if you want, you can just, if you're just making tomato essence and you're not bothered about the pulp from the tomatoes and using that for something else, what you can do is just take whole tomatoes, wash them, puree them down, freeze them, then into a bag, and defrost them, and you'll find that all the water, the tomato essence, comes out. So that's what you can do. You don't have to faff around like I always faff around. So just puree these down, and then we'll freeze them. And also, if you're wanting to freeze a glut of tomatoes, by pureeing them down, they're going to take up less space in the freezer as well. So it's going to like a solid block, because otherwise you're left with lots of air pockets. So if you want to freeze, or if you now wanted to. Actually, if you wanted to preserve your tomatoes in jars, what I would recommend that you do is you puree it down to this stage, put them in jars, nice clean jars, and then put those jars in a pan of cold water. Bring that water slowly up to the boil, and then slowly simmer for 2 hours until everything is so the heat's got time to penetrate right through to the centre of the tomatoes. And also, it won't necessarily cook them, but it will stop them, kill any bacteria, and preserve them really well. So that's what I would do that way if you don't want to take the space in the freezer. So puree this down. You don't need to see the rest of that, and I am waffling. So I'll puree the rest of this down, freeze it, and then we'll come back when I've got a little bit more time, which will be in a few days' time, and we'll talk about extracting the juice from the essence. But I'm gonna add that water to that as well, so all the water kind of comes out and it takes up less space. But if you wanted to use that as a tomato stock, that is a perfectly acceptable tomato stock, which you could make like a tomato risotto with. That'd be very nice. But anyway, that's it. I'm waffling. I'm not making much sense. I'm very aware of this. I've forgotten to say something. So I saved all the stalks from the tomatoes. There's loads of flavour in those. So what I'm going to do is, once I've pureed everything down, before I put it in the freezer, I'm going to put the stalks into the puree, and then it will flavour the tomatoes. And then when I make some pasta sauce, I'm going to cook those in the pasta sauce as well, and take them out afterwards. I'm not going to eat them, but they'll put lots of flavour into the sauce. As you can, if you smell them, I'm not going to smell them because we haven't got smell-o-vision. If you smell them, you can actually smell. They smell really kind of nice and intense. So I'm not going to waste that kind of flavour either. Just simply, once I've cooked the pasta sauce, I'll just simply remove those, and they can go on the compost at that stage there. But I'm not going to waste those either. And I will add, because I did have another second thought, is lots of people just do things in a certain way because that's the way they were taught, and they don't understand why they do things in a certain way. I'm always more interested in why we do things in a certain way and what's the best kind of outcome. So there's a lot of people talk about pasta sauces, and their way is the best because that's the way they were taught, but they don't understand particularly why they're doing things in a certain order, because they've never really just given it much thought. They've just always done it, and that's the way their parents did it, and that's where their grandparents did it, and that's the way their great-grandparents did it. But everyone falls out. But as always, as long as what you end up with is what you want, then that's the right way to do it. So that's fine. So if someone wants to make a pasta sauce their way, that's fine. It doesn't really matter. What I like to do is I like to pick tips up from different people and see, and then understand why they do things, understand it all, and then if that's useful to me, then I use that method. And I think that's a good way you pick out the good stuff and the usual stuff for you, and then you discard the rest. And I think that's a good philosophy on life. But anyway, that's it for now. I'll freeze these, and then it'll be a few days later. But this video will cook seamlessly, all like in one go. So the tomatoes have been frozen, and then I've defrosted them. So we're going to strain them through a muslin cloth. So favourite grim bucket, strainer, colander, sieve, whatever you want to call it, 2 layers of muslin cloth, and then you'll see that it's still a little bit frozen. So I think what I'll do is I'll just pull that frozen bit out first, like that, and then you will hopefully be able to see. You'll certainly be able to hear. You can see there that there's quite a lot of liquid. The pulp's kind of come to the top of the come to the, oh, yeah, the pulp's come to the top and the liquid's gone to the bottom, so you can see it's splashing everywhere. So we'll just do that, stop it from splashing everywhere. So you can see how, you can hear how fast that it's pouring through the muslin cloth. I've got 2 of these containers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, the other one's still a little bit frozen as well, which is fine, because I'm going to hang it up in the fridge overnight, and that will slowly drip through. And then tomorrow I will collect the essence, the tomato essence, and collect the pulp, and we'll have a bit of show about what the essence looks like and what I'm going to do with it and what the pulp looks like as well. You're not getting 2 things for one when you do this. You are losing flavour of the pulp. The pulp's not going to be as tomatoey because a lot of the flavour is going to leach out into the essence. So you're not getting like 2 brilliant products for one. You're getting 2. You're getting one. The essence is a good product, but the pulp isn't particularly well flavoured. It's still got quite a lot of tomato flavour to it, and it's got a lot of body to it. So I'm going to add it to something else. I'm not going to waste it. But you're not getting. It's not like it's going to make the best tomato sauce ever. The pulp, but it does have its uses. So you're not. There's always a trade-off. You're not going to get. There's always going to be one product that's slightly inferior when you do something like this, and sadly it's the pulp. But it's just a little bit of an experiment to kind of show you what you can do, and you can get the most out of something. But that's it. So I'll pull the other container into there. It's almost all come through now, but it just needs to defrost overnight entirely, and then we'll have a look at it again tomorrow once it's drained. So this is the tomato pulp after it's been strained. So as you can see, there's just still a little bit frozen in the centre, but that's all the pulp that's left in there, and the stalks of the tomatoes. I'm going to save that. It does. Oh, what's it taste like? I haven't tasted it yet. There's not much tomato flavour there left. There is some, so it's not bad. However, I'm not going to waste that. I'm going to use it in. I'm going to make some pasta sauce, so I'll use that as more like a bulking agent more than anything. There's still flavour in there. It's just that most of the flavour has gone into the tomato essence, which looks like pale urine, if I'm honest. But there's loads of flavour to it, and it makes lots. And a really useful thing to have. You don't have to make the tomato essence. It's just a video on how to if you'd like to. My advice, if you've got lots of tomatoes and you're wanting to make pasta sauce or turn them into soup or something like that, and you're not wanting to strain the pips, all the seeds and the skin out of it, the best thing to do is what I did earlier, which was to blanch the tomatoes, skin them, and then scoop the seeds out, and then it will save you a lot of job. What I simply did was I wanted some tomato essence, so I carried on the process and made that. But once you skinned them and got rid of the seeds and the excess amount of water, then that will be your best bet to make pasta sauce or tomato soup, something like that, because you've just got the pure tomato rather than the rest of it. So just kind of a video. I am going to make some pasta sauce later in the week, so I'm going to use that. But I always add lots of like tins of tomatoes and a bit of passata. And I always put vegetables in as well, because I always kind of think any opportunity to put vegetables into something which improves flavour and the nutritional value of it as well. So anyway, not particularly an Italian thing to do, because they just make like pure passata. But there you go. That is what you can do with when you've got a lot of tomatoes. I think that's it. I'm sure that's it. But yeah, so treat that like a stock. So you can add it to things if you want like a tomatoey flavour without the bulk of putting tomatoes in. So if you want to make a tomato risotto, use that instead of stock, and it tastes absolutely wonderful. Or just drink it as it is. You can heat it up, add a little bit of salt and sugar, and it will make it's like a clear consommé soup. So it's really kind of quite refreshing drink. I'm sure you could make some cocktails out of that as well. If you wanted to make a variation of a Bloody Mary, and it not wanting to be quite a thick tomato kind of flavour. Oh, there's a fly. If you like a thick kind of tomato drink, if you wanted like a refined Bloody Mary, I'd use that, vodka and celery salt and a little bit of Tabasco, and then that'd be kind of quite something else. But there we go. That's that for now, ish. There'll be more. There always is. There is more. It freezes, so even though I've frozen it once to get all that juice out of it, you can freeze it again. You can freeze fruit and vegetables for the second time without having to cook them again. So if you can, the apple, like I made apple puree the other week, I'd have no qualms about defrosting the apple puree and then refreezing some of it. It's only when you start getting down to fish and meats and shellfish that you need to be careful with refreezing. But as long as it's not hanging around for too long, fruit and vegetables refreezers relatively easy and relatively safely as well. So you can freeze that, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to preserve it in jars. So I'm going to put it all in jars and then put it in a big pan, fill it up with cold water, bring it slowly up to the boil, and then cook it for a couple of hours, just to kind of make sure that sterilise it and make sure everything within the jar gets up to over 85 degrees, 90 degrees, and then that will sterilise it, and then that will keep in jars for a very long time. There we go. I'm sure that's definitely it now. Definitely, I've got nothing else I can possibly say about tomatoes.